Of course, we were touching briefly upon COP there. COP27 is, of course, underway, as Rishi Sunak said in his first speech on the international stage at that climate conference in Egypt. He was talking about the United Kingdom's contribution to the solutions to climate change. But how realistic is it all? Let's speak now to Professor Myles Allen, Director of Oxford Net Zero. Thank you so much for joining me this morning. First of all, a lot of people will be looking at COP27 with a bit of a raised eyebrow, thinking, what on earth is being discussed here? There have been 27 of these summits now, and to many people, there hasn't been much progress at all. What's going on?
Well, I think you're quite right that the approach we're taking to trying to stop climate change clearly isn't working. And if there's one sort of headline to take away from this conversation, it's there's probably only one institution left in the world that has the capacity, the engineering capability, the access to capital to keep 1.5 degrees alive, and that's the fossil fuel industry. And very interestingly, that sort of approach just isn't on the agenda of COP at all. So I worry that, yes, it's a giant talking fest, but the right players aren't there. Let your listeners remember this. For what we pay for gas today, the companies supplying us the gas could capture every single molecule of carbon dioxide that gas generates and stick it back under the North Sea twice over. And yet we're not even talking about requiring those companies to do that. Why not?
It is interesting. I spent 2 weeks at COP26 in Glasgow last year and spoke to a lot of the people who were actually protesting the event. Now, these were climate protesters, the accolades of Greta Thunberg and the like, who were saying that carbon capture, what you're describing there, is a red herring. It shouldn't be pursued because it's giving a green light to the big, bad fossil fuel players. Is there a risk that some of this climate change activism is actually counterproductive?
Well, my feeling is, particularly talking to young people, because the analogy resonates with them, fossil abstinence isn't working. Emissions are higher than ever. Just telling people to just say no to fossil fuels is clearly not working for the world. We could just say no to fossil fuels. We could stop using them. And that's what the activists are demanding, but it's not happening. And it's abundantly clear we are going to generate more carbon dioxide than we can afford to dump in the atmosphere and still meet our climate goals. So we need to work out how to dispose of it. And we can dispose of it. The industry knows perfectly well how to do this, but they're not given any incentive to do so. By the way, I'm not blaming the industry for this because, in a sense, they're private companies. They do what they're required to do and maximize profits for their shareholders. If they were required to get rid of the carbon dioxide associated with the products they sell, they would just get on with it. And that, I believe, is the only course left open to us to keep 1.5 degrees alive.
There are very simple sort of pro-economic visions of how you do this. You slap a price on carbon and you let the market sort it out. You have a system similar to cap and trade in the United States. But what's happened in reality in many countries that have tried to price carbon is a huge political backlash and the inability to push it forward. And particularly in this country, we've got a lot of different sort of carbon taxes in different sectors, and none of them seem to be working on a clean pro-market basis.
Okay, so if I might disagree with you there, I actually don't think the solution is a carbon price. Carbon pricing helps to, I don't think the solution is a carbon price. I think carbon price is a help to get emissions down, but it's not going to get emissions to net zero. The reason for that is we cannot politically, feasibly, or even morally put carbon prices so high that we effectively ban the use of fossil fuels altogether. How are we, Britain, a country that's made loads of money burning fossil fuels in the past, going to turn around and tell Mozambique, I'm sorry, you're going to have to leave your fossil fuels in the ground, and if you dig them up, we're going to fine you some punitive amount. That's essentially what it would take for carbon pricing to actually stop fossil fuels from causing global warming. So no, we don't want a pay to pollute regime. We want a pay to clean up regime. The fossil fuel industry should be required to dispose of the carbon dioxide generated by the products it sells. Remember this. We didn't save the ozone layer by rationing deodorant and changing consumer attitudes to personal hygiene. We fixed the stuff in the can. That's what we need to do for fossil fuels.
That is a remarkably positive approach, and I'm really delighted that you've made the time to make it here on this programme this morning.